fight by fight breakdowns, discussing the biggest names in the sport. What's going on, Cougs? I'm your host, Justin Estuart, joined by...
I'm Edwin Campos. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk some boxing and go toe-to-toe for this week's In the Game. Topic 1, arguably boxing's biggest draw in the sport, Canelo Alvarez returns to the ring against the veteran contender, Avni Yildirim, on February 27th. Edwin, is this another cakewalk for Canelo Alvarez?
Yes, sir. It's absolutely another cakewalk. You know, I'm not the promoter. I don't have to sell the fight to you or nothing. But yeah, I think it's another cakewalk. You know, a lot of these mandatories. I think I'm not. If I'm not mistaken, this is the WBA mandatory.
Yeah, WBC.
WBC championship defense, and yeah, I think Yildirim, he's been on for 2 years. And then watching from his Chris Eubank fight, he seems to be very aggressive. He doesn't mind, throwing caution to the wind and throwing big hands. And just knowing, and then he got dropped in that fight as well. So.
Oh yeah, he got exposed.
He kind of got shown there. And then just knowing how good of a defensive boxer Canelo is, and how much of a power puncher he is, it's just hard for me not to think that Canelo's going to get him out of there pretty quickly.
Yeah, man, well agreed. And I think Canelo stops him at least under 7, man. I think this is just going to be another easy, let's go next fight, because I'm hearing he's already aligned to fight Billy Joe Saunders. So I feel like it's kind of, all right, I'll give you this mandatory, but we got Billy Joe, a super fight in Cinco de Mayo. So show me what you could do, and just another cakewalk for Canelo Alvarez. But shifting gears, boxing legend Manny Pacquiao has begun training for his next training camp, and his return to the ring is imminent after he defeated Keith Thurman about 2.5 years ago to earn the WBA Super Welterweight Championship of the World. You hear names such as Ryan Garcia, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, and UFC superstar Conor McGregor. Edwin, who do you think Manny should fight next?
Not Conor McGregor. That's the very first thing I don't want to see after Conor's last fight. But Ryan Garcia is an interesting one. I feel like that's maybe early for Ryan's development. And I've heard talks of an exhibition match. That's something I don't want to see professional boxers do. I think Errol Spence for me I think that's the appropriate matchup. I think Terrence Crawford is maybe a little too soon, considering Manny hasn't fought, I think, in 1.5 years, even though he had a great performance against Keith Thurman. But I think for me, Errol Spence right now is probably the most interesting.
And regarding a Spence-Pacquiao fight on the horizon, how do you see that playing out? Who would you favor in that fight?
Yeah, that's a tough fight, but I don't know. I think people underestimate Manny still. I think they still expect him to lose. But I think with the Keith Thurman fight, I think we realize he can hit more gears than I think people expect him. So I expect Manny to do well, and I think he can absolutely win.
Yeah, man, well agreed. I think it's most likely an Errol Spence, because he's obviously aligned with the Premier Boxing Champions stable. And after Keith Thurman, this man, Manny, he just seems to not age at all. He's like an ageless wonder, boxing legend, 8th division champion, senator in the Philippines. Like, what more does he have to do, man? He already has the best resume, one of the greats of all time. It's just going to be another day in the trip for Manny Pacquiao. But finally, there seems to be a lot of attention thrown to the recent boxing exhibitions that have transpired as of lately. You hear Tyson Jones, popular YouTubers boxing it out, NBA players boxing it out. Edwin, what is your analysis to these concurrent exhibitions, and how does it affect the current state of boxing?
I don't know that it negatively affects boxing, but I don't think, a lot of people say, oh, it benefits boxing. It gets all these guys' eyes on the sport. But you know what? I'm not sure it does, because I think a lot of these kids that watch these YouTubers or whatever, they're kids, like I said, they're in middle school, they're teenagers. And I'm not sure that's really the boxing crowd that is usually fans of the sport, that male audience, maybe 18 to 35 or whatever. So I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure it benefits the sport, and I'm not. And I think the older guys, they do exhibition fights as well. Like we just saw Tyson and Jones Jr. And I'm not mad at them as much, because those are real fighters. You know what I mean? And then they still want to compete, but they don't want to compete up against the very best guys, and potentially take a lot of damage. They're fighting guys that are kind of at their level. So I'm not mad at them as much.
Would you assess this situation as more for like these YouTubers fighting? Is it more of like a cash grab or just trying to entertain the fans in general? How do you view that?
I think it's both, because I think, like I said, they can do anything. They can do a hot dog eating contest and they'll get a ton of views and streams or whatever. But in boxing, you can get pay-per-views and ticket sales and merchandise. So I think, it's a huge money-making machine if they want it to be.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy. I feel like it is diminishing the sport, because you got other contenders and prospects that work their way towards the amateurs, and then you got these YouTubers all of a sudden just, okay, I'm gonna put a pair of boxing 8-ounce gloves and let's just fight, and then they get 1 million views because they're popular. But the whole journey in terms of the boxing career is just it's a profession. It's not you don't play boxing. It's a real sport. You get hit in the face. But yeah, man, just crazy.
Exactly.
But Cougs, that's going to be all for this week's episode of In the Game. I want to thank my colleague Edwin Campos for joining for this week's episode. And once again, I'm Justin Estuart, and you're watching In the Game.